Okay,
Ethne?
Pauline, why don't you go first? You're
Okay.
the mentee and the more important person here.
I am the mentee, correct. And my background is such that I didn't ascend to professorial status until 2013 because I worked in industry first, and then I got my doctorate, and then I got my job. Right now, I started in 2013 at the Western Connecticut State University Assenza School of Business with responsibility for the entrepreneurship small business management option in the management major. And I'm now tenured full professor since 2019. And I'm also responsible for ERIC at the Garage. ERIC stands for Entrepreneurship, Research, Innovation, and Creativity. And it's a space that we've just begun to carve out that will be a resource center for students, faculty, staff, and the greater Danbury community in Connecticut to provide assistance for entrepreneurship and small business. So I've got a lot on my plate, which is, kind of why I was interested in this program. But just in terms of scholarship, I know, Ethne, you made a point of addressing scholarship in your bio. And again, I think we're encouraging people to go check out our LinkedIn profiles to see more about who we are and what we do. But I do have, I tell my students, it's kind of funny, I have 1 5/6 doctorates. Because I have a doctorate from Pace University in management, but I'm also ABD for a doctorate in educational psychology from the University of Connecticut. So I come at this with various interests and objectives. And I do have 8 peer-reviewed articles published since 2013. I've made 7 presentations at the USASB annual meeting since 2015. I've also presented as part of a panel discussion at the Disbandi Symposium for Innovation Entrepreneurship in Higher Education. I also am actively presenting at the Eastern Academy of Management since 2015 and the CASE Association. So yeah, I guess I'm getting my bona fides up there for people to assess.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as Pauline said, please check out our bios by clicking on the LinkedIn link. Very briefly, my route into entrepreneurship came in a similar way, but earlier than Pauline in terms of chronological age. I left South Africa after starting a career in human resource management at General Motors. I went into political exile as part of the anti-apartheid movement. And I think that really birthed me as an entrepreneur, a change maker, and did a PhD in the UK at the University of Manchester. At the time, the UMIST, which was the School of Technology and Engineering, now part of Manchester Business School, and then taught in the UK before coming to the US. I started here in 2000 at Fairleigh Dickinson University, where I became a department chair and then associate dean, and then I moved to Montclair State in 2018. I find that international issues are very important to me. I've been a Fulbright scholar twice, once in Germany, once in South Africa. And the focus of my current research and interest is women entrepreneurs in Africa, particularly those who are emerging into the digital age with platform-based companies. And I think that probably gives a nice sort of summary. At USASB, of course, the reason I'm a fellow, just to put the USASB side there, I was nominated and confirmed as the USASB fellow in 2019. And that came after a number of positions that I held as part of my service to USASB. In 2011, for example, I was the VP of conference. I organized a successful conference. I've been VP of Publications for USASB. I actually started as a USASB member in 2003, when I became very involved in the Women and Minority Entrepreneurship Special Interest Group. And that really, for me, was such an amazing experience, very exciting experience. And since then, USASB has been my home from my home campus. So I think that's sort of a very brief introduction to me.
Yeah, so why did I apply for a spot? Well, I think last fall was when I got the invitation to the conference, and along with that, it said, by the way, if you're interested, apply for this. And I thought, well, what am I going to gain from something like that? And part of the reason that I decided to apply was because I now had tenure, and I was basically saying, so what now? What do I do now? What's my next step? And I wanted to broaden my experience, both in terms of entrepreneurial content. In other words, what do I need to know more about my discipline in order to get better at teaching it and practicing it? But I also wanted to explore the potential for entrepreneurial center at my university. I mentioned that Eric at the garage. And I saw that this mentorship might give me opportunity to pursue both, as well as explore future research opportunities. And so I said, well, let me just apply. By the way, I'd also heard from a couple of other women who had been in the mentoring program before and said that they found it to be, a really positive experience. So I'm saying, well, it never hurts to try to expand your network and, develop more of a robust set of acquaintances that you can use to enrich yourself. Ethne, what about you? Why did you decide to become a mentor?
Well, USASB was so important to me professionally when I came to the US from the UK. I was this reluctant spouse. I was actually talking about women and how we find our way into the labor market. I was a reluctant spouse. My husband was relocated here. I left a wonderful position at De Montfort University in Leicester, wonderful colleagues, and I was kind of disgruntled. I really didn't want to come to the US. And I virtually had to start all over again, building my career. And of course, USASB provided me with an immediate network. It was so welcoming, particularly to women. I mentioned earlier that I joined the SIG, and those colleagues were fabulous, just amazing. I met people like Diane Walsh, Frances Samatucci, a very good friend, became a very dear personal friend. Dorothy Moore, I don't know, whether you know Dorothy, but she did some of the early path-breaking research, qualitative research, looking at women who were starting growth companies. And so, other mentors include Mike Morris, Geraldine Franklin. These were all people who touched my life, my professional life, in such a positive way. And so, I know that mentors occur to us throughout our lives, and sometimes we're kind of blind to them. And I felt if I could alert younger colleagues, younger both chronologically and professionally, right, who perhaps don't understand the value that is there to be had if they look for that at USASB. I wanted to kind of give them a nudge and felt that, I had been helped. I wanted to grow our community. The The other thing, is I come from Africa, and we believe in Ubuntu, and it's a philosophy which I'm sure, Pauline, you're familiar with. Ubuntu is essentially the idea that, like a hand, like fingers, one finger, if you cut one finger off, it actually reduces the efficacy, right, of the hand. And so we are people through other people is a leitmotif that is quite important to me. I like to build community. And so that was, what I felt I could provide and also gain from the mentorship program. So, Pauline, do you remember that first call?
The you and I just had in January? Yeah. I do. Yep. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of fun to go back and to say, how did we first get engaged?
Yes.
With each other. I just love telling this story that, I already pointed out that I made the decision to be mentored, and even though I'd heard from my other colleagues that it was a good experience, I'm like, well, I wonder who I'm going to be matched with. And quite frankly, in taking a look at the fellows, I was like, gee, I don't know who would really be a good fit for me. I wanted someone with a similar outlook, a similar value set. And I didn't know that much about all of the fellows, having only been really involved with the SASB for the last 5 or 6 years. So I was like, gee, I hope I get matched with somebody good. And so in the annual meeting, so obviously I got accepted. And in the annual meeting, we had that session where everybody came together and they said, you're going to welcome everyone. You're going to be matched with your mentor. You're going to see who you're matched with in a minute, but we want to do an overview of why we're here, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there on my chair like, what? And I'm looking around at all the people. I think there were like 20 people, on the screen. I'm like, oh, Ethne's here. Oh my God. And I wanted to wave at you, but I thought, oh, that's not professional. We just don't want to do that yet. So I sort of waited, and then they did the breakouts, and we were told, you will now see who you've been matched with. I go into the breakout room, and there you are. I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And I wanted to share. Can I do this? Can I share? Wait a minute. How do I get this? Oh gosh, I'm sorry. We did this before, Brittany, and I do have a playlist. There we go, playlist. Look at this. Look at that. That's Ethne.
That was 2019.
No, it was 2020. I look back on it. It was New Orleans.
That's right.
I know. It seems like so long ago, doesn't it? It's the last time we were actually together. But this tells you we already had a connection. And I don't know whether the folks that are setting up the men knew that. But at any rate, I don't know about you. I think you were just as excited as I was.
I was.
They're on that break. We're like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And so then, as you pointed out, how do I get rid of that? Oh, there we go. As you pointed out, so I was being very obedient. Mark had said, well, you have to put up a set of goals. And so I said, okay, here are my goals. And I sent that to you. And, and we had arranged in our breakout session to meet up and figure out a time where we could get together. So even though we knew each other, I wasn't entirely sure what you were going to be able to offer. And so being very obedient, I put together my objectives, and there was something like, I want to spread the entrepreneurial mindset throughout my community. I want to have a supportive, coordinated ecosystem for everyone. And I continue to ask myself how I can best help others. And then you said to me, yeah, but Pauline, what are you going to do for you? And I was really taken aback. I'm like, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way. So, and the point that you made was that we still have scholarship responsibilities. And so maybe we should start looking at that. So you remember, why did you think that was such an important question to ask me? What are you going to do for yourself?
Yeah, I find, and we've spoken about this, often as academics, but particularly female academics, we are so invested in making life better for everybody else and helping others, right? We're always there to give. And very often we don't think about self-care. And by self-care, I mean academic self-care. It's very different to, going off and having a relaxing weekend. I mean academic self-care in terms of what will nourish you to do more things related to your chosen discipline, for example. I recall actually being at an Academy of Management meeting where Patty Green spoke at a panel, and her reflections kind of remained with me because the panel was focused on, okay, so what happens after tenure? You're sort of this mid-career professional, and what are the other ways that you can stretch yourself? Because I think naturally as entrepreneurship, educators and entrepreneurs ourselves, we are always looking for opportunity to grow, both, in terms of our own understanding of our discipline or making breakthroughs. Breakthroughs in pedagogy, which I know is very important to you as well. And so, but coming back to the question about how to engage, I think for those people who are looking to be mentored, one of the things that I felt with you was you were eager, you were so easy to work with because you came with a set of goals. We critiqued them, or I critiqued them, we discussed. We also felt that it was important for you to articulate beyond just the community. So to kind of broaden the scope. But really, that is the power that the mentee has in this relationship to kind of dictate the agenda. And I see my role as giving feedback in a way that is productive. It's, we've built the relationship of trust and integrity, which I think is also the other aspect that is important for new mentees. I've mentored and I've been mentored, and sometimes things go wrong, right? The relationship doesn't work because there is a violation of trust, perhaps, or the relationship doesn't work because one of the parties, it does not keep the commitment to regular meetings. That's happened to me. Yes. You set up meetings, you take a lot of time out of your week, and the person doesn't turn up or cancels at the last minute. I've really found that you are so professional. You always keep meetings and you're always prepared. I hope I can actually live up to how very structured you are. I love how structured our sessions are. It doesn't mean that we don't have fun. I mean, we have regular check-ins where we just talk. And I think sort of working productively, the other reflection for mentees is you need to feel comfortable that there's a fit with a mentor. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I do want to say that the structure, I mean, I was going into it, again, you and I both come from more of a corporate approach. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, I also have my own small business. I support artists who live in Ukraine. So I have an online, there's folk art that I sell online. So I've went to craft shows, did the whole bit. So I know about what that means. But in terms of setting goals and having the ability to say, here's where we are and here's where we want to be and how do we get there. That's something that I brought from my consulting work experience that I've always found to be extremely helpful. But you sort of checked me on that. And you said, you know, we really do need to be focused on certain other things that maybe you haven't considered. And I was like, wow. And so you provided a structure for me that was extremely helpful. I'm used to be the one initiating it. And it was so relieving to me to sort of not turn that over to you, but to have someone else come in and say, why don't we look at it this way? I think I was so hungry for that. So I really thank you.
I think I'll go first about the program. I have to give a shout out to Mark and Jeff. I love the regular bigger meetings because it prompts me to keep a structure in mind. I know that, you know, we have these check-ins. I want to give them a shout out because I think what we're doing is we're building a community of practice around mentorship for USASB members. And the other thing about our check-ins is that I can give feedback, but I can also receive feedback. The mentor can be, you know, I value our relationship because I get a great deal from our discussions, right? We pull apart, we critique in an environment of trust.
Yes.
And I think both you and I are very similar in we like our spreadsheets of where are we up to, you know, it's reinforcing a discipline, I think, for both of us. And so ultimately, you know, that relationship of trust, honesty, respect, I think we can give quite critical feedback, but the other person receives it in an appropriate manner.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that too. I wasn't expecting this, but you have opened my eyes to new theory that I hadn't encountered before. And I think I've done the same to you. So that ended up to be such a valuable aspect. And I'm not saying it's theory because we're going to publish or something. It's theory about mindset. It says, so how do we want to approach this opportunity? I almost said problem. We don't want to talk about problems. Opportunities that we encounter either in our research, the research questions that we're asking to be able to continue our research, or in the practice in the classroom or in our institutions as we're both trying to move forward some kind of a curricular or philosophical approach. And I do have to say, again, I'm so glad that they matched us, because the nice thing that we've been able to do that we're now really starting to delve into is to discuss our respective curriculum and think about how we might best serve our students in the wider community. I have to say it's really helpful for me. This is one of the challenges I felt at USASB. I come from a very small institution. I am the only person on my campus that knows anything about entrepreneurship or small business. And it's very, very lonely, because I'm not saying my colleagues aren't supportive in general, but there's no one that I can really say, look, I think we really need to change our programmatic aspects here. Here's some of the things I'm seeing with my students. What do you think? And I get this sort of blank, like, they don't have the same perspective that I do, coming from a design thinking or effectuation kind of approach. And so I think that, for me, I mean, I'm in a university that's diverse, but basically blue collar, and so are you. And it's small. I don't have any. I had one adjunct that helped me out, but other than that, I got nobody. I know you have a little bit of a larger institution, and some adjuncts you can go to, but we're both. I feel so comfortable because you're not like a big research university with, a program with, 6 faculty that teach and thousands of students. It's not like that. And I have to say that's been part of my concern going to USASB is that I'm looking for people like me, not like me individually, but like me in terms of the environment within which I'm expected to function. And so that has been so helpful. I don't feel as anymore.
Yeah, context is very important. Your point about loneliness is very real for academics, right? Particularly during the pandemic. Of course, we became so isolated. One thing that I should correct is Montclair State is a Research 2 institution now. But, you're correct in pointing out that we are smaller. Our program has grown tremendously, I'm pleased to say, over the last 3 or maybe 5 years. And we're really proud of what we've been able to achieve, but resources are always scarce. And our students are very similar to yours. I think for people like us who are able to spend more time now that we're tenured, thinking about what is best for our student body in terms of how we take leading edge research and translating that into ways in which the knowledge can be meaningful to students, not only to become entrepreneurs or start startups, right? Because our students are not necessarily going to go into a startup situation immediately. They might actually take a circuitous route through corporations before they start a company. But all of those things, I think you and I share, and so that's helpful. I'll go first. I think, what I am seeing is, Pauline is so very different, or you are very different from the typical person who's on the tenure track, right? And I think for me, I am so excited by the experience of working with you. I think it's given me an insight into additional value that the mentorship program can provide people who are beyond tenure, and to kind of carve out a space specifically for people who are looking for that kind of enrichment that you were seeking and that motivated you to come into. I know that we get applications from people across the spectrum, but I think what I'm seeing here is maybe there should be a specific call for people who have had tenure confirmed and who are looking for, okay, so what exists beyond tenure? What do you think?
Yeah. It's interesting that after I went through that whole incredible journey of preparing my tenure packet, which is, those of us who have been through it, it's like, oh my God, it's almost like a dissertation. It's really, really stressful. After that, I kind of felt this letdown. It was like this lack of anticipatory tension. Like, well, what do I do now? And how do I make this work? And one of the things that I think you have gently focused me on is, well, you may have tenure, but you still have obligations. And I think I said this late. I was going to say this later on, but I'll say it now. Yeah, our school is recently AACSB accredited, and so I do have an obligation to publish 2 or 3 times in 5 years in order to maintain my academically qualified status. So, just because you're tenured doesn't mean things stop.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. It requires a shift in focus and perhaps an outside infusion of new energy, which is exactly what I see this doing for me. And so I didn't expect it. It wasn't anything that I was anticipating. I was just saying, well, I think it's a nice chance to expand my network. But look at what's been going on. You and I had just had this great conversation about how to introduce change and widen our macro perspective. And we've discovered these research avenues, research streams that we have in common. Like, oh my God, we can co-publish. This is like so cool. Like, wow. Yeah. And so I'm left now with, well, not left now, but I mean, I have two initiatives now this summer. Number one, as you have appropriately counseled me, find a paper that's in progress and work on it to get it ready for publication. And you have agreed to be my desk editor for that, which is awesome. And the second thing is, I do want to create a white paper of talking points to share with my administration about this widespread focus on the entrepreneurial mindset across and throughout my community. You know, as Diane Welsh has been so good at doing, I really want to try to make that happen as well. And so those are two initiatives that are very clear to me now. I mean, I would have done the second one. I would have done them both probably anyway. But having you on my shoulder saying, you know, Pauline, you probably should, has been extremely helpful.
Well, you know, and similar to that, as you know, we were introduced around the same time that I started an initiative in my department to review the complete program for entrepreneurship. So we're redoing our program level goals and starting with our entrepreneurial mindset class, where I felt, you know, I had inherited a class that was okay, but could be better. And I am very excited that I'll be in a position to share some of that material with you. And of course, I benefited from some of the feedback during our sessions. So yeah, and I see opportunities to co-publish, you know. For example, we've spoken about doing a case together. And so I'm very much looking forward to this be continuing to have positive impact. Pauline, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in right here and say, obviously, what's going to be helpful to me in the future? Well, first of all, as I mentioned before, this focus, I have an external focus for things that I know in the back of my mind I got to do, but, you know, somebody's sitting on my shoulder saying, gee, Pauline, maybe. But the other thing that I want to stress, and this is going back to what you had said earlier about the role of the mentor and the role of the mentee. I feel now that I have more of a coach, not just a mentor, but a coach who's willing to listen to my overall concerns about the big picture and brainstorm strategies for introducing and actually monitoring institutional change. Like, how awesome is that? And so, and we had talked about, I read into an article just the other day about the mentor-mentee relationship, and this article commented on the role of the mentee. And so I want to speak to those who might be interested in proceeding to become a mentor in this Longenecker Fellows Mentoring Program, that you really need to consider the fact that you have a role as well. You need to take responsibility as a mentee for your own process and to share with the mentor how it's working. And just like with a relationship with your therapist or whatever, it's okay to say, look, this isn't working for me. Mm-hmm. Can we discuss how we can make it better? And so I think what Ethne, what you said about that development of a mutual trust and being very clear about communication protocols. I mean, it's okay to say, look, I'm not real good at keeping meetings, but I give you permission to nag me about that. I mean, it's okay to do that in this kind of relationship. But I think it's really important that each party recognize they do have a very specific role to play, and they need to embrace that role and follow through on it. And you know what? If the relationship's not working, when then go back to Mark or whoever's in charge and say, look, this isn't working, but I still want to get something out of this process. Can we discuss matching me with somebody else? And both the mentor and the mentee, I think, are perfectly able to do that. And so I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think, you know, when I think back I'm reminded of somebody I mentored previously, and she was from Greece, and made me aware, of course, that the Odyssey is where we get the idea of the mentor from. And Telemachus, who was the son of Odysseus, is mentored by Athena, who appears in the guise of mentor, who was left by Odysseus to take care of both his son and his wife, Penelope. And so Athena gives moral support and psychological guidance, right? However, in the modern context, in our lives today, that dyadic relationship is so rewarding for the mentor as well. And that's what I would stress to people who might have the opportunity to become mentors, that it's not a one-way relationship. It has to be two-way. And, thank you for all of those Friday afternoon sessions at the end of every month, or whenever we met during the spring semester. It was such an awful semester for everybody, right? We all worked so hard. And whenever you and I had a scheduled call, after a grueling week of teaching, to be able to sit and talk to somebody and share and have the other person acknowledge experiences. And, by the end of our chat, I would feel refreshed. And so I think, that is a critical thing for fellows who might become mentors to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, I just want to end by saying thank you so much, Ethne, for being there for me. And I really appreciate the relationship that we had before, but the depth that we've been able to begin to discover. I mean, guess what? This ain't ending in next January. I mean, no way.
I'm pleased.
I'm pleased. Selfie when we're in our next purpose thing. Say, look at us now. Isn't this cool? This is so great. So again, I want to thank the Longenecker Fellows for this opportunity, the structured opportunity to get to know you and some of the other folks even better, and to feel more involved in a community that I think is much more welcoming than I initially thought it would be when I went to my first USASB meeting. So thank you so much.
Thank you.